forgot. Okay, so this is the revolution, and this is the introduction. This is so this is the mass uprising, and well, Bangladesh's history, it never happened. It was unprecedented. Millions and millions of people were on the street. Then, see, this is a hero. This is a guy who bared his chest and dared the police to shoot him. And they shot him. They found how many? 40 metal pellets were found on the right side of his chest and 50 on the left. And this was the UN investigated, and that's the UN report. So this is a guy who asked the police, shoot me. And they did shoot him and killed him. And that really galvanized the movement. That caught the imagination of the people, and everybody was on the street. And so this is a young man, carried by rickshaw, and unfortunately, and the Prime Minister, the UN report basically made Sheikh Hasina responsible. She was the one who ordered this killing. And the killing according to UN report, about 1,400 people were killed and about 20,000 were injured. And a lot of other people were arrested. And so this is findings of UN fact-finding mission. And see, helicopters were used, and about 1,200 people 12,000 people were arrested, and media outlets not to report what was happening, and victims and their families and lawyers intimidated by police, and 78% of the deaths were caused by firearms. Military rifles were used, and so this was the extent of the atrocities. And okay. Yeah. So mass uprising, and it started with a quota reform movement. There were quotas. The employment was reserved for the freedom fighters' offspring, and even their grandchildren. They were reserved, and most of those went to political cronies of Awami League, and so started with quota movement. But there was a road safety movement before. In 2018, the kids, I call it a kiddie rebellion, and the school kids against there are a lot of accidents in Bangladesh, a lot of killing, and some of the school children were killed in road accident. So they staged a movement throughout the country and brought everything to stand still. And then police and the student wing of Awami League dismissed them from the street, and that ended in 2018, before the election of 2018. And then the quota movement started in 2023, basically. And see, the students, everybody was upset, everybody was unhappy. And so they were looking for opportunities to really raise their voice. So students from Dhaka University, the largest university, started this quota reform movement. And Hasina then tried to repress that brutally. And these are the evidence of brutality. And ultimately, the students were smart enough to call a march to Dhaka. And that long procession you saw, millions of people basically marched to Dhaka. And it was such a it created such a situation that Hasina was not safe in her prime ministerial residence. And in fact, her residence was within the block of my office and about a couple of blocks from my home. And so ultimately, army convinced her to leave. Otherwise, people would storm the prime ministerial residence, would probably kill her. And so army convinced her to leave the country. And I think we are. And before the quota reform movement, the civil society also did, the political parties tried to resist, but they were not able to resist because of draconian laws and also repressive measures of Hasina. In fact, she not only jailed them and the disappearance and extrajudicial killing, but also some of those people were interned for years. And it's called Ainagor. It's a house of glasses. And they were in small rooms. They were interned there for some of them were there for many, many years. And they were released after Hasina fled the country. And when Hasina fled, basically all her party people, all the leaders of her party also tried to run away, but they took refuge in the cantonment, in the army barrack. But Hasina fled to India, and unfortunately, those over 1,000 people, at least 1,000 people, all the senior members of the police and also political leaders, took refuge in the army barrack. But army later let them go. So many of them are in India right now, and unfortunately. And the law enforcement collapsed. And so this mass uprising, which brought an end to Hasina, created opportunities. It really united all the people. All the political parties tried to resist Hasina, but they were not successful. But when the killing started, and it really brought together people from all walks of life and galvanized a real movement. And so people were united. So even at the end, on July 4th, Hasina left on August 5. On August 4th, her leaders of our party said that they are going to fight it out. And so they will do everything possible to quell that movement. But they did succeed. So this is Step Down Hasina, and the students called people to march to Dhaka, and that really brought an end to her regime. So that created opportunities. So opportunities where people were united, and they could declare a revolution and could have a new socio-political order. They could abrogate the constitution and start afresh. And after Bangladesh was created in 1971 as a result of a liberation war. And it was a bloody liberation war. And in that liberation war, some estimate 3 million people, but it's more like 300,000 people were killed, and widespread devastation. And about 10 million people took refuge in India, and the Indian army intervened at the end. The liberation war was fought by the Bangladeshis themselves, young people like me for the liberation war. But India intervened, and in 9 months, Bangladesh was liberated in 1971. And after that, not so many people were killed one time, and so brutally. So the students who led this uprising, and everybody supported, they could really have a new Bangladesh and start afresh, but that didn't happen. They tried to form an all-party government, but one of the major parties, they didn't agree. As I shared with you, there are two major parties, Awami League and BNP. Awami League fled. The BNP didn't want to be part of that all-party government. They thought that they were the dominant party, and so if there is election, they will go to power. So they didn't want to share power with anybody. In fact, it's as I said it later, it's a dominant party, one dominant party syndrome. And in fact, our political parties are not really political parties. They are undemocratic. They are family enterprises basically. And the elections were basically as I said, that there are sham elections. Last 3 elections were sham elections. But even before that, the political parties acted like syndicates, and they brought together people and used money to buy nominations and buy votes and come to power. So those things could be ended by this revolution. But the major party didn't cooperate. BNP is called Bangladesh Nationalist Party, didn't cooperate. And so they could initiate major institutional reform, and they could stop looting and plundering. And one of the previous slides, this guy, one of the ministers, he has 360 luxury properties in the UK. He had 250 luxury properties in Dubai, and at least 25 properties in the US. So this is an example of excesses of looting and plundering. They looted the banks, basically. The crony capitalism at its worst in Bangladesh. So over 236 billion, I think, were stolen. And these people shared these loots, unfortunately. They could rebuild from scratch the law enforcement agencies, which was totally politicized, and also expedite the justice of the killers who were involved in killing at least 1,400 people and injuring over 20,000 people, and try to rejuvenate the economy. And the Awami League, the one big question was what to do with Awami League and whether to ban Awami League. They banned the student wing of Awami League, but not Awami League. And especially there were pressure from our neighbors. Unfortunately, Awami League and our neighboring country were friends. And Awami League, Sheikh Hasina gave all one-sided concessions. And so they are totally loyal to her. They not only gave a refuse, but also all our party people and other goons, bad dudes. And they have been really carrying a misinformation and disinformation campaign against Bangladesh, and one of the misinformation is that there is killing going on, killing of Hindus, the minorities, and the Islamists took over Bangladesh. And there are some excesses right after the 5th of August when Hasina fled, and there was no police. Nobody was there on the street to protect. So there are some excesses, but those excesses were basically some of the minorities were also killed. They unfortunately belonged to ruling party. And one of the unique things in Bangladesh is that all the minorities supported Awami League, and almost all of them, very few exceptions. So there are some looting and killing of some of the minority houses, and some were killed. But they were almost all of them were Awami League leaders. And so there were BNP didn't want to ban Awami League, but the other parties wanted. But since BNP is the major party, and also there are a lot of pressure from our neighboring country, so Awami League was not banned. And one of the opportunities, because this was like Nazi party, unfortunately, they did a lot of bad things. They needed to pay. And students became part of the power structure. The interim government headed by Professor Yunus. Professor Yunus in the middle, and I am on the right side of him. This is the Consensus Commission headed by Yunus. And so he was brought back, and he was Hasina's #1 enemy. There were several hundred cases filed against him, and he was vilified. And so he was brought in, and he formed the cabinet. And the students, 3 of the students were part of the cabinet. And instead of they are playing the watchdog role, they became part of the power structure. And the corrupting influence of power, unfortunately, in those societies, and really engulfed them too. So that was the opportunities. But the reality was that the army chief and the president, who was also the handpicked president of Bangladesh by Sheikh Hasina, they really manipulated, and they formed an interim government with, in fact, army opposed the inclusion of Professor Yunus as the appointment of Professor Yunus as the head of the caretaker government, because the army chief was also a relative of Sheikh Hasina. Everything was family, basically. Everything was controlled through families. And so what happened was that the interim government was finally, because of the students' demand, because of the universal, basically, demand, Yunus was given the responsibility to form the government, interim government. But very soon, unfortunately, the right side, the disunity started. This is probably the nature. All these people came on with one intention, to get rid of Hasina. When they had different interests, they became disunited, unfortunately, including students. And then the bureaucracy was all partisan, all belonged to the Hasina regime. And some of them were removed, but most of them stayed on. And they caused mischief, unfortunately. And another thing that happened is that in our culture, unfortunately, the winner take all. Winner takes over everything, and including capture of all the institutions within the country. So Awami League was controlling everything and collecting toll and all kinds of other things. They are doing bad things. Now, after Awami League left, the BNP, which is the dominant party, and their people basically took over those things. So, and now BNP has been clamoring for elections for 2 reasons. One, they feel that if there is elections quickly, then they will be able to come to power. And also, longer they wait, the more out of control their own people go. And so they want quick election rather than reform. And Uh, so in reality, uh, not only disunity developed, but also there are a lot of misinformation, disinformation. Uh, uh, the social media is used, and even Hasina, after Hasina fled, her son went on TV and said that they had enough and they are not going to bother about Bangladesh anymore. But very soon they changed their position. Now Hasina is inciting really the all kinds of defiant move by her supporters within the country, and so that creates a fluid situation right now. And so basically, what we can conclude is that although this mass uprising could turn into revolution, not rebellion, it was a rebellion, could turn into revolution, but it didn't. It really dissipated after a while. And so the government initiated reforms rather than doing everything new, reforming the system basically. And they formed 11 reform commissions. And so 11 reform commission include Constitutional Reform Commission, Election Reform Commission, Judiciary, Civil Administration, Police, and Anti-Corruption Reform Commission. These are the first 6 reform commission was formed, and I was given the responsibility to come up with recommendations for reforming the electoral system. I came to America when I was 25-year-old. And then I lived in this country for 21 years. I went to school and taught for many years, and went back in 1991. And since then, I've been an activist. And one of the areas that my activism focused on was on election, ensuring free and fair elections. So I was given the responsibility to come up with a set of recommendations for cleaning up the electoral system. And the gentleman who is from Illinois State University, a political science professor, he was asked to head the commission to reform the constitution. So 6 commission members, 6 commissions submitted. We submitted our recommendations, about 500 small, big recommendations. Then Professor Yunus formed the Consensus Commission with the 6 of us part of that commission, headed by him, Professor Yunus. So what we did was that we, out of those about 500 recommendations made by 6 commissions, we picked 160 of those recommendations. We prepared a spreadsheet and gave to the political parties, 38 political parties or political alliances. We gave those spreadsheet and asked them whether they agree or don't agree or partially agree with those recommendations. Those are important recommendations which will require constitutional changes and which will require really an agreement, broad agreement. The other recommendations could be implemented by the government through administrative action. So these 166 are the important recommendations, and so we sent the spreadsheet to 38 political parties and the alliances, and we not only asked them whether they agree or disagree or partially agree, but also which way to be implemented those, whether through the forming Constituent Assembly, or a referendum, or through even a proclamation, or through the regular parliament, enacting constitutional changes. But the problem with the regular parliament enacting the constitutional change is that there are basic structures that cannot be changed unless there is a constituent assembly. So that's a challenge. So we gave them 6 options, not only yes or no or partially agree, but also 6 options which way to implement. So 13th was the last date for them to submit their answers. And so we started already the dialogue with the political parties. We already held dialogue with 4 political parties. And after I go back and we'll continue our dialogue. And major parties will have to hold dialogue for multiple days. BNP and the 3rd largest political party is Jamaat, which is Islamist. Although it's Islamist, but it's relatively moderate, not the extreme Islamists. There are other Islamists. And so that is the 3rd largest party. So we'll be engaging with those political parties and wish us luck, and I don't know how it will go to turn out. It won't be a piece of cake, that's for sure. And we sent those to them, and hopefully what will happen is that after we get the responses, we'll collate those, and the reform ideas, recommendations they agree on, and we'll prepare a national charter, and hopefully that will be signed, and the political parties are all committed to implement those, and then hopefully a means of implementation will also emerge from this conversation, from this dialogue with the political parties. So the idea is that we'll have a national charter, and our chief advisor, Professor Yunus, said that the responses political parties sent to us, those will be made public. So people will know who said, who agreed, who didn't agree, whose position was what. So that created some pressure on the political parties, but still major political parties, especially BNP, is clamoring for election. And they want to hold election. They in fact want to hold election right away. And so they are now talking about street agitation against the government and demanding for election. And having Professor Yunus as the head of the caretaker government, head of the interim government, was really saved Bangladesh. And because Awami League was a big party, and they have had widespread support. I don't know how much support they have now. And also, unfortunately, our neighboring country didn't ditch their allegiance to Hasina. And there has been, so our neighboring country, unfortunately, and which I find it unfathomable, the way that they are going, and Awami League, and Army to some extent, the Army chief especially, who didn't want Professor Yunus to be the head of the caretaker, head of the interim government. And even BNP, to some extent, are trying to destabilize the government, unfortunately. And but Yunus, as being the head of the interim government, prevented a lot of mischief they could do, because he had widespread support, not only within the country but also in the international scene. And the previous the American administration was very close to him. In fact, he was a personal friend of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and all the presidents. He got the American Medal of Honor and all kinds of the highest awards of U.S. he got. So he had, and all over the world he has widespread support. So that gave the country stability. Otherwise, it would have been very, very difficult to manage the fluid situation. And so the challenges we have now is unfortunately, Professor Yunus, the people he picked were not always the right people, unfortunately. They are not, there are questions about their competence and their credibility and even cohesion. And they are not a really team. They have not been working as a well-knit team. And broken democratic institutions and no checks and balances, basically, that was gone. It was the Prime Minister was all in all. And our Constitution was such that it was a prime ministerial system. President was basically a figurehead. And so another challenge is the rising disunity. And as I said, the dominant party syndrome and family enterprises functioning as syndicates. And Bangladesh doesn't have a history of bipartisan decision making, unfortunately. And so it's either or. Either you are with me or you are not with me. And everything they try to settle on the street rather than on the discussion table. And so basically, we have politicized the business, and business was politicized, vice versa. And the money played a big role, and the businessmen increasingly got into politics. They're buying nominations for big money, and this was an investment, and they could recoup by looting and plundering, and much of their looting ended up in Western countries, and some Eastern countries too, Malaysia and other countries. So huge amounts of money were transferred abroad. So now, way forward. If we are to really have a stable Bangladesh, a democratic Bangladesh, there is relative stability now, but if we are to have a long-term stable democratic system, we need to transform our politics, and we need to have the political parties become democratic. And you cannot have democracy with autocratic and the family-type enterprises acting as political parties. And we must decriminalize, and it has been a criminal empire. Hasina's regime was a criminal empire, create a criminal empire. So we need to get rid of the criminals, and the political parties need to be transparent, financially transparent, and all the deals they make under the table, and that must end. And political must cater to the people rather than to quota interests, the families and the cronies. And we'll have to really try to settle issues and problems through discussions rather than street agitation. And transformation of governance. We need transformation of the governance, strengthen institutions. Institutions are broken, institutions all politicized, and the incompetent, corrupt people were brought in to head those institutions as part of Hasina's capture of the institutions. So we need to strengthen the institutions and have checks and balances. So rather than prime ministerial system, we need to have the system where president has some power, and the prime minister was not only the prime minister but also head of the party and head of the parliament and the leader of the house. So that must end. And also there are proposals to set a term limit for prime minister. And then zero tolerance for corruption. We need to do something about corruption. Transformation of our Unfortunately, I did not do well with my handling of the challenges. So this is the way forward. So transformation of governance and transformation of political culture, the tolerance of opposing views, and it's not a it's not a winner take all, or it's not a we'll have to learn to share power rather than one party and taking it and take over everything. And independent media was controlled, and strong civil society. Civil society was also under repressive measures of Hasina, and citizens must be informed and engaged. And then we want to end this thing with free and fair elections, obviously, and bringing back the caretaker system. By the way, the caretaker system was, I challenged the caretaker system. I went to the court, and I was the lead petitioner with several other people, and later political parties joined. So our High Court already found the caretaker, the constitutional amendment that abolished the caretaker system was unconstitutional. They found it already. And so it's in the court. So hopefully caretaker system will be brought back, and in the near future. You see, in Bangladesh, the culture is such that whoever is in power, if they want to, they can rig the election. And because the weak institutions, because the politicization. So we need unfortunately a system of government during the election which will ensure free and fair elections. So caretaker system will have to will be brought back hopefully in the future, although the next election will be under this interim government. And then zero tolerance for corrupting influence of money. Money has been causing havoc, and money has turned politics into business. Basically, business people were buying nominations, buying votes, and going to power when there were elections. In the last elections, they didn't even have to do all of those except for buying nominations with huge money, and make election commission accountable. My commission came up with about 150 recommendations, and some of those recommendations call for making the election commission accountable, but election commission doesn't want to be accountable, and they are resisting. We say that they will have to certify the elections, and if there are serious accusations against them, and this could be investigated and actions could be taken against them, there are no provisions for that. We recommended those, but the election commission is resisting those. So I'll end here by saying that so we are in a fluid situation right now, and without Yunus we'll be in real soup. We'll be in real trouble, but hopefully we'll be able to have some reform instituted before the election is held, and hopefully we'll learn from what happened in the last 15 years, and use that learning to have a democratic system in place. And one thing that our history says, that the dictators don't last in Bangladesh. And Hasina's father, who was the father of the nation, became a dictator, unfortunately. He used the parliament to extend his tenure, and the major overhaul of the constitution, and he had to leave. Unfortunately, there was a military coup which killed Sheikh Hasina's father, and also her almost entire family. And then General Irshad took over after that, and General Irshad also ruled about 10 years, 9-10 years, but he didn't last. And again, mass uprising got rid of him. So Hasina became the worst autocrat, and really totalitarian autocrat, and everything is under her control. And she didn't last either, although we had to give high price, and hopefully we'll learn from it and will not allow the history to repeat itself. We'll have a democratic future in place for us, and that's what we are trying to do, what we are committed to do. So thank you. I'll stop here and take questions.
So there are a couple of questions in the chat related to polarization in the country and the electoral system, and especially whether the country is considering a move away from first past the post voting as part of the reform process. Has there been conversation about the electoral system and what that might look like, and how that might contribute to the polarization in the country?
Well, there is a proposal to have a upper chamber. So we now have only one parliament, lower chamber. So there is proposal to have upper chamber, but lower chamber to both the Constitutional Reform Commission as well as my commission recommended the present system, first past post for the lower house, but proportional representation for the upper house, and allowing independent voices to be populated with some independent voices, populate the upper house with independent voices. Yeah.
Okay. We have a number of questions here.
But I just want to add one more sentence. But BNP, the major party, doesn't want to have anything to do with proportional representation.
We have a couple of questions here about the student movement and the relationship to political parties. So has there been portions of the student movement that have transitioned into political parties, that have been able to transition from the protest period into a political party capable of being a force in the upcoming elections when they come?
See, one unique thing about Bangladesh is that the political parties, major political parties, have student wings. They affiliated and associated bodies, and they are basically the goons. And they are, in Bangla, it's called latials. They are the ones who instrument of violence, basically. And so they, using those, they control everything other than law enforcement agencies. And the Awami League student wing, which is called Chhatra League. By the way, I was also a student activist in my days. And I belonged to the Hasina's student wing. At that time, Hasina wasn't around, obviously. And we are not that bad people in those days. And so Hasina's student wing is banned. But now the elephant in the room is what to do with Awami League. And we all want inclusive system, but then again, Hasina's party acted like the Nazis, and the way they repeatedly see during the time of after the independence, Hasina, her father's regime killed thousands of people, and they were not well known, but thousands of people, all the dissenting voices. And then this time Hasina killed so many people. So there is something wrong with this party, people feel. And so a lot of people want to ban this political party. But then there is serious pressure from our neighboring country, as well as army too. They want the inclusive system, Hasina's party, to be included in the election. But unless our law governing the election makes this affiliated and associated bodies illegal, but they remove the provisions of those associated and affiliated bodies from their constitution, but they are functioning like the way they used to. So unless something is done against this political, the student wings of the political parties, and we will have serious problems in the future. But BNP doesn't want to do away with that, and nor does Jamaat. Jamaat also has a very strong student wing. So that creates serious challenge for the future, unfortunately. And this is very unpopular too. Having these student wings are very unpopular. The people don't like it. There have been surveys that over 90% of the people don't want these student wings. But political parties, because of their own self-interest, they want to continue these.
So we have a couple of questions about international influence. You've already talked about India to an extent. There are questions in the chat also about China as well as the United States' role. I'd be very curious to hear your reflections on those two global players.
You know, the previous administration, previous US administration was very supportive of the movement against, although not publicly, privately they tried to support the civil society, and they tried to be critical of the heavy-handedness of Hasina regime. But we don't know. In the past, see, India was the conduit for the US administration. India was sort of given lease to look over the neighborhood, but it didn't, it changed. And during the, I think, Obama administration or before, there is a separate bureau for Bangladesh now. Bureau or at least separate from India, India Bureau. And so now we don't know what will happen in the coming days. We have a lot of challenges with Rohingyas. And because of Chinese opposition, the Rohingyas problem could not be settled. And Hasina tried to play with both sides. But although her total allegiance was to India, and ultimately India gave her the shelter. So we do not know how it's going to shape up in the coming days. Having said that, Professor Yunus just took a trip to China. China invited him. And on the 29th, the day I came here, he returned. But before that, he expressly asked India to invite him to visit India before he goes to China. But India refused to do that. Not only that, I think the G8 summit and Professor Yunus tried to meet with Modi, cold shoulder, didn't meet. And there is going to be a BIMSTEC meeting in, I think, the Thailand or? Thailand, yeah. And Bangladesh government wanted Professor Yunus to meet with Modi, but Modi said no. So we do not know how it's going to shape up. And I hope for the betterment of all of us. We are two countries, but same people, and we have commonality, a lot of commonalities. But so much of bad blood, although India shed their own blood for Bangladesh, but over the years, India's interference in the Bangladesh's political affairs really created serious anti-Indian feeling, serious, in fact. So I hope the wisdom will prevail, and our leaders will be courageous, will be able to settle those problems. One of the problems is the share of water from the common rivers, international rivers, and we have been deprived of those, the much needed water. So, you know, Bangladesh was a country when I was growing up. It was, the water was never a scarcity. Now it's becoming a scarcity. And many of our, Bangladesh was a country of rivers. Many of our rivers are dying now. So it's changing. It has serious ecological and environmental problems. And we have global warming situation and climate change. Those are serious challenges. So I don't have the answer. I hope cool heads will prevail and we'll settle our disputes, and India will accept the new regime and will support a democratic transition of Bangladesh. And otherwise, we all will be worse off, unfortunately.
There are several questions in the chat raising questions about the status of pluralism in the country, the status of minorities feeling vulnerable after the transition, the status of religion in the country and politics, and whether there's the potential that this could become more disruptive after the transition. What concrete steps can be taken, do you think, to address those challenges?
I would say that there is a lot more tolerance in Bangladesh toward minorities than, and unfortunately, our neighboring countries. And Islamophobia and the using Muslim as Islam as political slogan, or the action against propaganda against Muslims serves the political interest of the ruling party. I'm saying it frankly and openly, my views. This is my views. So, after 5th of August, when there was no policeman on the street, the students and all the political parties guarded the minority houses and made sure that there was no excesses. And there are still some excesses, but brought an end to those things. So I don't think minorities will have any problem unless if we have a democratic transition. I don't think minorities will have a problem. But if we do not have a democratic transition, and we may go in the wrong direction, unfortunately, Islamists may take over. So, but even our Islamists also are lot more, we found them to be a lot more tolerant. And Jamaat, the largest Islamist party, and more moderate, and they have been openly really supporting the safety, and they have acted also for giving the minority community safety. And so I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, and ultimately cool heads will prevail and we'll become wise, and we'll have a democratic transition, and we'll have a pluralistic system. And another thing that happened is that a lot of girls, a lot of women were on the street during the uprising. But many of these, and there have been trawling and there has been harassment. And as a result, the girls, we don't see that many girls anymore open on in the political arena. So hopefully things will change, and we are committed to changing those, and we want women's leadership. And in fact, one of the proposals we made is increasing the number of parliamentary seats to 400, and 100 reserved for women, and ensuring direct election. And that our commission proposed that. And the other commission, Constitution Commission, supported increasing the parliamentary seat to 400. But we proposed in India, in the panchayat system, the rotational system. We proposed a rotational system, and BNP grudgingly seems like agreed to raise the parliamentary seats to 400, from 300 to 400. But I'm not sure whether they will accept the rotational system. Let's see how it works out.
So maybe we can wrap up with this, and then we'll have time for some conversation, continued discussion over the reception. We have a couple of questions about essentially the performance of the interim government, right? Now that we've had several months pass, potential lost opportunities. You talked about the sort of opportunities and then the realities. Decisions made about the status of the army chief, and the relationship between UNIS and the student movement in general. I mean, as you look back, I know it's been a turbulent period. Are there particular decisions that you think the interim government could have taken differently if they had thought a bit harder about it? Or are there particular moments that you look back on as opportunities lost?
I think one of the things they could have done, they could have a better team, unfortunately. And there are a lot of NGO personalities, and the people who were there, some of them, they are not known to be corrupt, or they are not known to be bad people, but not the most competent people. And also, they have not been really working as a team. And one of the bad decisions I feel personally, not only the team, but also including three students in the cabinet, the interim government. And there are now accusation of corruption, and also that created disunity within among the students. And that was probably, in my view, was not the right decision. They should have played the role, they played the watchdog role, and that would have really kept the unity, and then we'd be able to probably institute a lot of reforms. So students have become weaker. They were a formidable force. Nobody dared to say anything challenging the students. And our judiciary was very partisan. The whole appellate division resigned because of the students really raised voices about their partisan actions. And so they had that kind of power. And but unfortunately, it didn't last, and they have become weaker, considerably weaker. So that makes the government weaker, and with weaker government, they don't have as much clout to push through the reforms, unfortunately.
All right, well, great. Well, maybe we can thank Dr. Majumdar one last time. Thank you so much.